Good morning everyone, welcome to a new update, and today we're going to discuss Cardano again, as that's the coin that's having the most momentum right now given the Coinbase listing, and it dropped significantly after. Why are we going to discuss it? Because it's important to understand these news events and also the structure of Cardano in itself. But before we're going to continue, do not forget to subscribe to the channel beneath, and also do not forget to like this video, as that's helping me a lot to grow this channel. So what's happening on the markets right now? We can see that Bitcoin is chopping around. It's just bouncing between 53k and 60k, which is still very natural. So we're going to see up here what we can do with the current structure of Bitcoin, and after that we're jumping into Cardano. So currently we can see that Bitcoin is acting inside that range, in which 53k was support critical. I was actually looking at 55 as well. However, we dropped a little further towards 53, and that was the final crucial level before I was anticipating a potential breakdown towards 50k. But 53 is holding here, as you can see, higher low constructed, and since then you are looking at a resistance zone which is around 60k. I've marked this level previously and we bounced back from it in a very harsh and painful way, if you would say it, in which we see that we tried to break through the resistance but we couldn't, and granted a bearish divergence and immediate drop down. So what's next? Well, it's generally just a range bound construction, in which if you take the daily chart, it's just in between which decision or which way we're going to move from here, as literally we can say or argue that we're going to move up or down, right? But that is the case currently with the price action of Bitcoin, in which it's on the edge of making a decision. And if we go back in history, we can see that we had this entire structure here as well. We can see that we had this entire structure here as well, in which that if we can't break that high again, so we can't break above 60k, we are arguably going to test the lows once again, and then we might be dropping down towards 48 to get a more corrective and sideways period. However, once we break through 60k, you can assume that we're going to have a continuation towards 68 and 75 in the next levels. But we are on the edge, especially given that we can see this complete drain down on volume confluent with the bearish divergence that's also showing on the chart. So we are in that in-between motion, in which the markets have to decide which way it's going to go, and that's based on the lower time frame critical levels that we have here, in which we just failed to break through 60k. So the critical levels to watch right now for me personally on the chart of Bitcoin here, and I'll just erase some of those chart levels that we have here, or so squigglies. So the critical level on the upside is definitely 60k, but on the downside I would argue that we have to hold this previous low here. So we once again have 55k and 53k as the areas to watch. Then we have to zoom in some more. So imagine if we get another bounce up and we can't crack this critical resistance zone that we have here. So in the current price action, we can see that we've tested this entire resistance, couldn't break through it, and we failed and we dropped south, right, to test the previous high. Now, as we have tested this level, you will not assume that we get there, that once we get there again, we reject again, as we have tested one time already. So in this case, the critical area shifts towards the area around 59k. If 59k breaks, I'm assuming that we're going to accelerate and see 65 plus. But if this fails to break this entire region here once again, so we get a move like this, I'm assuming that we're going to test the critical level on the downside, which is 55k, and that could be an entry point for traders to look for. especially if 55k is going to hold and we bounce back again in a strong pace. We might be starting to argue that April is going to be a new bullish month for Bitcoin. But those are the critical levels to watch. So we have to definitely zoom in some more than what we usually do. So I'm going to look at those levels at this stage. Then Cardano, in which we can see that we had a pretty harsh drop down there as well. Arguably, we can make those bearish divergences as well. But this is pretty much based on the fact that we lose the previous high or we start making lower lows as well. Right now, the entire construction of Cardano is getting a little bit more easy to trade, in which if you are going to argue that this is a bearish divergence, you have to watch the previous construction as well, in which we had a bearish divergence there, but it failed to become a valid bearish divergence as we just continued making higher lows. So in this entire construction of Cardano against Tether, you have to watch this region for support. As long as Cardano remains above this entire level of $1, it seems that we're just going to continue. If this is lost, I'm going to look at anything in the region of 70 cents. But right now everything is just fine. And then we get into the in the discussion of what happened yesterday. So usually with events as the Coinbase listing, and you can go back in time to watch Scale, Matic and Sushi, as those were listed as well, and after the listing they started to drop south. Pretty normal. As usually the hype goes towards the event, and once the event took place, reality kicks in and the price drops back down. With Cardano, it started to shoot upwards, and then Bitcoin made a slight corrective and harsh move as well, which drained down the price of Cardano a little bit more. But if you look into the technical chart, you can see that once it's around the area of 145, which is the previous all-time high and resistance zone, if it starts to drop down, the only support level that we have is this previous high and the entire block that is constructed around $1.20. So at this stage, you don't have anything in between. So once it starts to reverse, it's going to be a painful drop down as there's just those big gaps in the chart. So what is next right now is just that we continue to consolidate. It's assumed that once Bitcoin is going to fall down again, I'm assuming that Cardano is doing the exact same, through which we can see a pretty much conservative or sideways action on Cardano in itself. Is the construction done, or is the bullishness on Cardano done? No, it's still a very bullish project. And there's still a very bullish chart construction, as long as it stays above this $1 level. If that remains, everything is fine, and we can assume that we're just going to continue with this bull market. And then you have to check the Bitcoin pairs once again. So looking at the Bitcoin pairs, you can see that we're just starting up with this entire bull cycle. As the Bitcoin valuations in 2017 for those altcoins were way higher than what they are right now, which means that in 2017 during the alt season, altcoins become overvalued against Bitcoin, and right now they're just pacing up towards the standards of Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is currently 3x of what it used to be in 2017, while altcoins are still below their all-time high of 2017, or they are getting close to that level. So there's still lots to gain for altcoins and way more to make. But what we can see on Cardano is that Cardano, if we discuss critical levels to hold, the Bitcoin pair is holding the critical level that we see here. If this entire region is lost between 16 to 18, I'm assuming that we're going to see a test of either 12, at least 14. 12 is going to be a massive entry. But in the end, what we see is that we're currently making a rejection. We do see a relief rally, and most likely we're just going to have a consolidation period as the hype is slowly draining away from Cardano. And once that compression is done, or that sideways period is done, the new cycle or the new impulse wave is going to start, and then you can use the Fibonacci extension tool to derive those levels that we can start facing, and that is 4K, but most likely also 5.5K sets. So what we are looking at on the lower time frame for Cardano right now is that we failed to break above the resistance zone, most likely get a relief rally once again, through which this region between 23 to 24 is the critical level to break through. If that fails, I'm assuming that we're getting a test around 18, and after that test we most likely get a new impulse wave going. So the critical conclusion here: never ever FOMO into an event like the listing of Coinbase unless it is you're very early in the news or you have insider info. But if you do not have that and you can see that the chart is running up again, avoid any entry at all costs to make a very optimal risk approach, risk reward approach. So that's the lesson that I want to give you today. Do not forget to subscribe, and I'll see you again tomorrow.